All right, guys, we are on the home stretch. It's Life Science Turbo Review Part 4. Please make sure you're on page 15 in your packet, top of the page. Organisms change over time. Evolution is the word we use for these changes in a species that happen over time. When we're talking about over time, we're talking about a big amount of time, over many, many, many generations. Charles Darwin was the English naturalist who first proposed this theory of evolution by natural selection. And here's a short video to help remind you of some of those main points of natural selection.
The theory of evolution was developed by Charles Darwin and published in his book On the Origin of Species. He explained that natural selection is the process behind evolution. Charles Darwin developed his theories after his adventures upon the HMS Beagle. In his travels, he observed that creatures found on the islands he visited were similar to ones found on the mainland, but appeared to be slightly different. It wasn't until he returned home that he came to the conclusion that species are specially modified to their environments, and that's why they differ. He developed 4 conditions explaining why this happens. Darwin's theory of natural selection by descent with modification is testable and observable fact. Experiments have been conducted in the wild and in labs. Let's dive deeper into Darwin's 4 conditions. Condition number 1. Individuals within a population differ. There are features that differ within populations of the same animal. In our case, the feature that varies between our giraffes is neck length. Some giraffes were born with long necks, some were born with short necks. Condition number 2. The differences are, at least in part, passed from parents to offspring. Darwin's descent with modification is the idea that offspring are fairly similar to their parents, with some genetic differences. Condition number 3. Some individuals are more successful at surviving and reproducing than others. In the case of our giraffes, the long neck individual did not acquire its neck by stretching to grab the leaves. Instead, individuals within the population were born with a neck length that was longer than others. Because the longer neck allowed them to reach the food that was otherwise unattainable, it gave them an advantage. Condition number 4. The successful individuals succeed because of variant traits they have inherited and will pass on to their offspring. Giraffes with the longer neck advantage are in better health and able to pass this feature to their offspring. Because this trait is more successful than shorter necks, more individuals in the population have it. Over time, this process can result in populations that specialize for particular environments and may eventually result in emergence of new species. In other words, natural selection is an important process, though not the only process, by which evolution takes place within a population of organisms.
All right, so back on your notes. Natural selection is sometimes referred to as survival of the fittest. You'll hear that as like a catchphrase for this. The main points of natural selection. In a population, some individuals have traits that help them survive. When we say help them survive, we mean that they will live longer and be more successful in their environment. They'll have the right adaptations to allow them to survive long enough so that they can reproduce. So if these are more likely to reproduce, then those traits that those individuals have will be passed on to their offspring. And so now we have those helpful traits in the next generation too. And this will continue this way until a larger portion of the population has that helpful trait, until ultimately the entire species really as a whole has improved. Our last topic. Organisms interact with other organisms that can cause disease. Microbes are responsible for lots of different diseases. We've got viruses, bacteria, fungus, parasites that all can cause diseases. Viruses are not always considered organisms because they're not made of cells, but the others are, like bacteria, like fungus.
There's a humongous fungus among us, and I know it's not a mushroom.
Now, bacteria specifically can be fought by antibiotics. The word antibiotic means against or anti. Bio means life, so against life, but really specifically antibiotics target bacteria. They don't work on viruses, they don't work on fungus, they don't work on parasites, only bacteria.
Bacteria, bacteria. Look, there's bacteria, bacteria, bacteria. You might not see them, but they're there. Bacteria, bacteria. Everything you touch, bacteria, bacteria. That's right, salmonella bacteria. But we have...
All right. Vaccines, on the other hand, prevent viral diseases. And so think vaccines, viruses. They both start with V, right? And they are a preventative measure, something you do before to be able to prevent getting the disease. Whereas antibiotics you take after you have the bacterial infection to fight it off. Here's a little additional information about vaccines.
With flu season in full swing, let's take a minute and talk about vaccines. All it takes is one sneeze for the virus to get into your body. When your immune system sees the infection, it makes special proteins called antibodies that stick to the surface of the virus and make it easier for white blood cells to find and destroy. Once you have antibodies, you're immune and can't get sick again from the same infection. So what about vaccines? Vaccines work the same way, except now the virus is injected into you with a needle. Wait a minute. Vaccines contain viruses? Yes, but that's the point. Your body needs to see what the infection looks like in order to make antibodies against it. Now, vaccines don't contain live infections. The virus is always killed or weakened before it's given to you. With every infection, it's a fight between the virus and your immune system, and sometimes the virus wins. That's what makes you sick. But with vaccines, the virus has been weakened, so it's not a fair fight. It's like fighting someone half your size. So you can become immune by either getting sick or getting a vaccine. But when you weigh one against the other, the risks with vaccines are much, much lower.
All right, now the immune system, of course, is our body system that fights off disease. The immune system is actually parts of several different systems working together to fight off pathogens. And there you have it, guys. You're ready to go. That's the end of part 4. It's the end of our review. You're going to do awesome. Good luck on your science MCAs next week.